Hello. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create the confetti death effect for enemies in the top-down shooter game, and what I did to bring all of that together. And so, first things first, let me show you what that looks like on screen in-game. And so we're going to go ahead and load up. If you're familiar with the Halo series, you've probably seen a similar effect in Grunt Birthday Party, which was one of my favorites, and it was the inspiration for this effect. And so, as enemies spawn into our level here, and start to chase us, when you're able to shoot them down, you'll see we get that nice confetti effect coming out of the enemies. And so once we have that effect, I'll show you how to attach it to your enemy as well. So to start off, we're going to create some vector images. So in Adobe Illustrator or any other type of program that you want to use to create a vector image, go ahead and create a vector image for the pieces of your confetti. I chose to use a circle, a 6-pointed star, a 12-pointed star, a nice tight swirl, and this twisted rectangle. And that's what I thought would make really good pieces of my confetti. And so once you create those, they're going to be black and white images. The image that you want to appear in your particle is going to be white, the background black. And that's so we can remove that background and bring just that particle piece to the front. So first things first, go ahead and import them as textures, and they should look like this when you open them. So you can see background black, our white image in the front. That's going to make for a good material for us to use. And so we go into our material, and here's what it looks like on the graph. So we have our texture sample here, the 6-pointed star. That's connected to this node with a particle color connected here into the B slot. So those are going to multiply. And then we're going to multiply that result by 1 and plug that into emissive color. The other thing we want to make sure that we do is in blend mode, set it to additive. What this does is this will allow it to remove the background from the image and display what you see here. I like to preview on a cube because I think it's the best primitive to preview this on, because it's going to show us the image per side. If we preview on like a sphere, it's going to look kind of stretched and not what we want. So preview on a cube is probably the best way to view how it's going to look inside the game. Now once we're done with creating our materials, now we go to our particle emitter. And so right here, our particle emitter, and here's what this looks like. So I have plugged up 5 separate particle emitters for this. One for each of the materials that I'm using to create the confetti. And we got that nice explosion here in the background. You can kind of see as we go through what it looks like. So it's exploding out and kind of falling. We're a little rotated, so this is what it's going to look like. And so as we bring ourselves back into the confetti image, there we go. So we get this nice confetti explosion. And so how you build this out is you have your material is going to go here, the emitter origin, so where you want this particle to spawn from, any rotation you want it to have, and how you want it to align to the screen. So I have it aligning away from center so that when the particles emit, they emit from that origin point outward. The next thing we're going to mess with is emitter loops. Emitter loops, if set to 0, it will loop indefinitely. There will be no end to the loops. So if you want something that stays on screen for a long period of time, say you were building steam or smoke for a fire, there you would use 0 for your loops, because you want that to stay indefinitely. Now, at least while it's emitting, you want it to be on indefinitely. For confetti, we don't need it to stay indefinite. We need it to stay one time. And so we're going to loop it one time. It's going to fire off that confetti, and then we're going to see that complete pop up at the bottom of the screen. That lets us know that the emitter is finished. And then we have our duration. This is how long it lasts. So it's from anywhere from 0 to 2 seconds. And so not a lot of time built into that. just long enough to get a good, nice burst effect, and then to watch the particles fade out. And so we did that for all of these. So lifetime here, I built it the same way. We have 2 to 3 seconds on lifetime. So this is how long those particles will stick around after the emitter's done. So as you can see, not long after the emitter is complete, these particles stick around. They're going to hit the ground in most cases and then disappear. For initial size, I chose any size between 50 units and 10 units. And then that's on all 3 axes. If you want a uniform size shape, make sure all 3 axes are the same and use that distribution vector uniform. That's going to give you to where the shapes don't distort on each axis. You'll also lock the axis here. This way they don't distort. So this way if it's X is 15, Y and Z will also be 15, versus if X is 50, where Y and Z could then be something totally different. Initial velocity, I have between 100 and negative 100. And I have between 100 and negative 25 on Z. The reason why I have that set this way is so there's a nice burst out, but also in sort of even distribution amongst those different velocities. So we get a nice spread out from the center point. Acceleration across the life is on a constant curve locked on the X and Y axis. So this is where we're going to showcase that velocity over time. Initial rotation, not important here. We want it to stay kind of facing that screen for the player so that they can see the images clearly when they explode out. Actor collision. This is one node that I'm not completely familiar with, and something that can be adjusted, especially when we're tuning this game. We're doing some polish. We're going to need to look at collision a little bit more effectively so that as enemies die near walls and these particles hit, they bounce off the wall versus disappearing into the wall. And then initial color. So I have it set between these 2 colors, and so it will produce any color possible between these 2. And so that's why we get a lot of different colors as you see coming out of this. If you look at just the hex star, so if I can, go ahead and disable all but the hex star, and you'll see how we get so many different colors in there for the hex stars. And so that's how you build the particle. And so how we attach it to our enemy is we're going to open up our base enemy. I build all of the enemies off of a base enemy class. As children, it makes it much easier to manage variables. And so what I do is we looked at our event. So as we're damaging, we're going to calculate if the enemy is dead. If they are dead, then we're going to run through a series of functions. And so one of those being enemy death. So on enemy death, we're going to go into our enemy particles if they're not explosive. So if it's not an explosive enemy, it triggers the particles. It's going to create these death sounds and then trigger these emissive particles. And so emit particles, it's going to take the enemy, the emitter spawn here on the enemy's head, and then it's going to get that location, rotation, and scale so that it can dump in the particle and spawn the emitter at that location and then activate. And so it's going to auto destroy once it's complete, so you never have to worry about that emitter firing off again in your level. And that's how you apply a death effect here to your enemy with an emitter. So it's really useful if you wanted to have other particles that happen on enemy death. This can happen for any number of different particles that are available. If you want to have a blood splatter, for example, that's one particle that can be created and done through an emitter on enemy death. That's just one option. Confetti was another option. It was our personal favorite, so that's why we went with it. But thanks for your time, and I appreciate it.